This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so welcome for the very first class of mobile automation with Appium. So in the previous class, we already had a demo and I explained you that what are the topics we are going to cover, what is the duration of the course. So it was more or less about the, the total curriculum, how we are going to proceed, what you are going to achieve at the end of the course, and what are the prerequisites of the course. We have covered all these things. So now this is the very first day and we will start with some of the basics today. So basically this is going to be our first class. So this is the agenda for today's session. First of all, we will see that what is mobile testing. You know, we go with some basic definitions or something like that. Then we will see what are the different mobile platforms on which we have to do the mobile testing. Then we will see some different kind of mobile approaches. Then we will see what mobile testing lifecycle is. So probably if you all guys are coming from a testing background, you have already been acquainted with the testing lifecycle, software testing lifecycle. But here we will see what mobile testing lifecycle is and how this mobile testing lifecycle is different from software development lifecycle, the traditional software development lifecycle. Then we will also see mobile development lifecycle, right? So we will see mobile testing lifecycle, mobile development lifecycle. Then another thing is we will see what are the different kind of mobile apps which are available, what are their characteristics, and what are their limitations. And at the end, we will take the question and answers, or probably I will go through some of the interview questions that we have prepared or I have prepared for this particular agenda. And we will go through these interview questions one by one, right? So this we will try to achieve in this first class. So let's go for our very first topic, and this topic is what is mobile testing? You know, so mobile testing comprises of two basic parts. The first is the functional and another one is non-functional. So it's more or less like the software testing. If we are testing some software, right, so we are testing the functional things and we are testing the non-functional things. In the same way, mobile testing also comprises of functional and non-functional aspects. So what are the functional aspects? Functional aspects are the aspects which are related with the functionality of the application, right? So if you have an app, for example, if you are having IRCTC app, I'm just giving an example. So there are a lot of features or the functionalities which are associated with this app. So one functionality can be registration of the user, another functionality can be login, another can be make a ticket, book a ticket, something like that. These are the functional requirements. Another thing is non-functional requirements, and non-functional requirements are basically usability and performance related things. So when I talk about usability, what do we mean by usability? Usability is look and feel, basically user interaction, UI UX. So we say it as UI UX. UI is user interface and UX is user experience. So user experience means how users are feeling. Are they comfortable when they are using this app, or they are not comfortable, something like that. So these all things are related with non-functional aspects. In the same way, performance is related with non-functional aspects, and mobile testing covers all these functional and non-functional aspects. So testing normal web application on different mobiles also come under the hood of mobile testing. So mobile testing is not only testing the apps, but it's also about different kind of websites on mobiles as well. So, in the demo one, we talked about the mobile first approach. What was the mobile first approach? It was an approach that at the time we starting the prototype of building the website, we are thinking about the mobile considerations, right? This is the mobile first approach. So that's why I'm saying mobile testing also covers testing different testing different websites on different mobiles. Because when you are, probably you are navigating through a website, you have encountered this thing. When we are navigating to a website on a mobile, sometimes the UI or the user interface is not so good. There are alignment issues, there are truncation or something like that. So that's why we are testing the websites under the hood of mobile testing in our for the websites as well. Any typical software mobile testing can also be done by manual and automation means. So it's like that, in software testing lifecycle, we have manual and we have automation. In the same way, with mobile testing, we have the automation and the mobile means. It means you can test the apps manually and you can test the app with automation also. So there are a lot of tools for doing the automation. Like Appium is one of the tool. Then there are different tools like Espresso, very famous tool for Android, right? So these are the basic tools which are used for Android, and for iOS we are using Xcode. We are again using Appium. These are the different kind of tools by which we can do the automation. So why mobile testing is important? As we already talked about this thing, I think in also in the very first demo session, that it's important because we want a proper performance of our mobile, right? We want the proper performance, we want proper functionality of our mobile, we want better performance, we want better usability, and we also want the user loyalty. What exactly users loyalty is? Users loyalty is, if I am a new user and I am going through some website and I don't like the UI UX of this particular website, then what will happen? Then I will not be going to this website again. I'm a bit reluctant on going to the website. It's something like that. You are you want to purchase on some e-commerce website, right? You want to purchase something, and when you are navigating to this app, especially mobile app, you see that the layout of this app is not good, or something is truncating, or something is not working well. So probably your loyalty is not towards that app. You will not come to that app next time. So that's why mobile testing is very important, to encounter all the functional and non-functional aspects together, so that we can create a user loyalty, right? And the last point is to be in a competition. Competition is the key success, because right now, for every domain, we talk about e-commerce, we talk about financial institutions, we talk about something else, health industry, fitness industry. So they are in competition with each other. They all are having their solutions on the mobile. And if we don't like to spend time on a particular app, then probably we are going to a different app. And that's why a proper testing, proper functional and non-functional aspects of particular app are very important to be in competition. Now, what are the different mobile platforms? Probably you already know about this mobile platform. So they are Android, iOS, and Windows. So there are three major mobile platforms, right? There are some other operating systems also, but they are being used on a very less percentage, right? Like Samsung, they also have their own operating system, but it is being used on a very less percentage of the mobiles, right? So majority wise, there are three platforms: Android, iOS, and Windows. What is the market share of these platforms? So this can also be asked sometimes in interview, though it's not so much important. But just keep in mind, if somebody will ask you about the market share, that what is the market share? Android is leading with 75% of the market share captured in mobile. So whatever the traffic which is being generated by mobile or tablets, I'm not talking about the desktop and laptops, the traffic which is being generated by the mobiles, out of this traffic, 74.43, like approx 75 percentage of traffic is coming with Android. iOS is 25%. Samsung is 0.22%. Unknown, there are some other unknown resources also. KaiOS is 0.0 and Windows is 0.03. So you can see, like, if I compare with three different, the major contributors, iOS, Android, and Windows. So you can see, like, most of the market is captured by Android, and then second number it's iOS, and then Windows. Windows is quite less. Okay. So if somebody asks you in some interviews that how much of the mobile traffic is being generated by Android or iOS, so just keep these figures in your mind. Like 75% of the market share is captured by Android and 25% is captured by iOS. So this statistics which I am presenting is responsible for globally, like these are the global statistics. We are not talking about the country specific statistics, because if you see the country specific statistics, for example in USA, maybe the iOS users are a bit more than the users which are displayed here under the global statistics. In the same way in Europe, if you encounter the European Union, so maybe the iOS users are much more in comparison to the global statistics. So I think in Europe is contributing to 40 to 45%. In US it's approximately somewhere around 50% of iOS users, and they are surpassing the Android users. So it depends from country to country as well. But globally, if you see this data on a global way, then Android is 75%. Now let's see the concept of SDK and .apk. How many of you have heard this term APK before? You can answer in your chats and I am able to see that. Anyone who is aware about this APK file? Okay, no response. So I have heard. Okay, Revati is saying she has heard. Okay, that's good. So let's understand the concept of Android SDK. Ram has also, okay, perfect. Sahil has also heard that. Perfect. Good. Good. Okay. So let's understand the concept of Android SDK and .apk file, right? So SDK, what is SDK? SDK stands for Software Development Kit. So probably if you have already programmed with Java or some other programming languages. So let's take here the example of Java. In Java, we have JDK. And what JDK is? JDK stands for Java Development Kit, right? In the same way, SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and Android SDK is Android Software Development Kit. So it's a kind of a kit, or it's a kind of, the combination of libraries which are responsible for, which are used for Android development. So Android SDK is Android Software Development Kit. SDK contains a set of software tools and programs. If I am talking about programs, then these are the libraries, right? Which are used to develop to create the which are used by the developers to create applications for specific program. So these are the basic libraries which are used by the developers, by which they can create their application on top of Android platform. So in the next session, like in not in next session, but after the next to next session. So in the fourth section, we will see the architecture of Android. We will see the architecture of Android, and we will see that how Android is working behind the scenes. In this architecture, you will see certain libraries, certain tools, and then you will be easily with this architecture, you can relate the concept of SDK. So right now you can just understand SDK comprises of the tools, and the libraries, programs which are used by the developers for creating the specific programs. So SDK tools comprises of lot of things. It include libraries, it include documentation, code samples, processes, guide that developers can use to integrate in their own apps. So if I have to make my own app, right? So I don't have to write all the code from the scratch, because there are some inbuilt libraries which are helping me. So for example, I have a mobile and I am creating app in which I am using camera, right? So I don't have to write all the things of the camera from the scratch, because there is already a library which is helping me for writing the camera related code. In the same way, for the gaming related things, uh, we need the 3D kind of animations. So for 3D kind of animation, there's already a library in Android which is helping us for creating these 3D things. So we don't have to be writing the code from the scratch. And why we are getting these things? Because we are using SDK. SDK comprises of the libraries, documentation, and code samples, which will help the developers to write the code and to integrate into their own apps. SDK are designed to be used for specific platforms or programming languages. So for Android SDK, what kind of programming languages we can use? Any idea? You can write in the chat. Do you have any idea? Anyone is having idea what kind of language we can use with Android for developing an app? Java. Shrisha is saying Java. Revati is saying perfect. What else apart from Java? Python? No. Kotlin. Perfect. Sahil is writing Kotlin. Kariyappa is writing Kotlin. Swaraj Lakshmi, Ruby. No. So Android development is basically done in Java and Kotlin. So these two languages are perfect. Satya is writing Java. Yes. So Java is right and Kotlin is right. So basically this Android development kit is working with Kotlin and Java right now. So they are providing, if you go to this Android website, the homepage of the Android website, which is maintained by Google. So you can see all the code samples either in Java or in Kotlin. Now, what is APK file? That's very important. APK file is Android package file, Android package kit file. So this is the APK's abbreviation, which stands for Android package kit file. And what is Android package kit file? It's a kind of a file format for applications to use the Android operating system. So see what's happening. If I am creating some app to be working on my mobile, so I have .apk file for that. So what I have to do, if I am going to the Google Play Store and I am looking for this app, I am searching for this app, eventually it's the APK file which is getting installed on my mobile. So if you want to install some app in Android, basically in Android, I'm talking about Android environment. So you have to just look for the APK file. And what APK file is? It's a kind of a jar file. You know, in Java, we have jar file, and in Android, we have same kind of APK file. So it's kind of a packaged file which comprises of all our code. So for example, I'm writing a code for some particular app, right? And in this code, I have written thousands of lines, you know, 1,000 or 10,000 of the lines. So this is all my code. Now what I have to do, I have to package all this code in a file, right? This file is known as .apk file, and then I am giving this APK file to the users so that they can install it on their mobile. So for example, I am just giving you one example. So if we go to Google and search for example, uh, IRCTC APK file, right? So we will be navigating to this, and here it's available for our download. You know, it's saying free download, and if you are clicking on this download, so it's navigating to the link download the APK, and if you install it, if you download it, then this APK file is being installed. So whenever you are going to the Google Play Store, this is the APK file which is getting downloaded and which is getting installed in your mobile. So just in a very simple words, I am explaining in very simple words, APK file is nothing but it's a kind of a jar file. You know, it's a kind of package file which we are using to package our code. So whenever I am writing this Android code, I want to package this code in particular file. And this file is known as .apk file, Android package kit file. And this APK file is responsible for installation of any app. Okay. Now, concept of Xcode SDK and IPA, right? So the same way we are having this Android SDK, in the same way for iOS, we are having Xcode SDK. It's also very important, right? So you have to make it clear it is Xcode SDK. It is known as Xcode SDK, right? And in the same way, we are having .apk in iOS, we are having .ipa file. So these extensions are very important. IPA file is nothing, but it's exactly the same thing like APK file. So whatever the iOS developers are writing in their code, they want to package it so that they can install it, right, from iOS App Store. So that packaging is done in form of IPA files, and this is known as IPA file, right? So APK and IPA, these are the two versions for Android and iOS. So if I am talking about Android, And if I am talking about iOS, these are the different versions. In Android, I have APK, and in iOS, I have .ipa. Okay. So IPA stands for iOS App Store Package. This is the abbreviation. Any file with IPA extension is an iOS application. So wherever you are seeing .ipa extension, you can easily understand it. It's an iOS application. iOS SDK is also known as Xcode SDK. So Xcode SDK, like previously I told you, Android SDK. In the same way, we can say it at iOS SDK or Xcode SDK. Both things are perfectly fine. It's a software development kit which is used to develop mobile app on Apple iOS operating system. So like in Android operating system, we are using this APK. In the same way, for iOS operating system, we are using IPA. So any one of you, again, it's a question. Do you know in which language we are coding for iOS? You can write your responses in chat. So Satya is saying XPath, no. Swaraj Lakshmi Java, no. Revati Python, no. Any other options? PHP, no. Anyone else? Linux, no. Anyone else? Any guesses? C Sharp, no. Satya C Sharp, Kariyappa C, no. Sahil Kumar C Objective, no. Mainly it is Swift. This language is known as Swift. So Swift is the basically the language in which this all iOS development is being done, because this is the proprietary language from Apple. Okay, so this is Swift. So maybe you have to also remember this, because sometimes someone can also ask it just for your query. Someone in interview can also ask this question, that do you know in which language this iOS development is being done? So then you should be aware about this Swift. Okay, perfect. Let's go to the next slide. So let's do a comparison for the mobile platforms. What we are doing in this comparison, let's see. First, launched in the year, Android is launched in 2008, iOS in 2007, Windows in 2009. So Windows is, coming after all these two. So first was Android and second was iOS, right? Android was owned by Google, iOS is owned by Apple, and this is owned by Microsoft. Languages which we are using, Java and Kotlin. For iOS, we are using Swift, and for Windows, we are using C Sharp, because C Sharp is the proprietary language of this .NET platform, right? Object-oriented language in the .NET platform is C Sharp. So that's why we are using C Sharp. For iOS, it's Swift. For Android, it's Java and Kotlin. There was a question. Let me go to the chat again. There was a question from Arjun. What is Kotlin? I am hearing it for the first time. So Kotlin is nothing but it's a kind of a language which is being used for Android development, and it is introduced by Google. So I think 4 or 5 years back it was introduced by Google. So it's comparatively a new language, and this language is providing a lot of added advantages over Java when we are coding for Android. So right now, if you are a developer, for example, if you are a developer and you want to code in the Android platform, you can use either Java or Kotlin. But nowadays, most of the people who are learning it from the scratch, they are using Kotlin because it is providing a lot of added advantages over Java. Okay, let's go to the next session, which is type of mobile apps. So now this is a very important interview question or frequently asked question, that what are the different kind of mobile apps. So the first is the native app, another one is hybrid app, and third is the web app. So in coming slides, we will see what is native app, what is hybrid app, what is web app. In a meanwhile, can any one of you give me example of hybrid app? If anyone is having idea what hybrid app is, just you can write in the chat. Okay, so nobody knows. Code ones. Banking apps. Yeah, banking apps, that's somehow true. Code ones, I'm not sure about that because I've never used it. React Native, perfectly fine. Combination of hybrid and native apps. No. Both native and web app. No. Okay, let's discuss it. Thank you very much for the responses. And now C. So what are the native apps? First of all, come to the point. What are the native apps? Native apps are the apps which are specific for the operating system. That's very important. These are specifically for the operating system. Means we have a separate app for Android, we have separate app for iOS, and we have a separate app of Windows. So these kind of apps are known as native apps. And how these native apps are built? They are built with the help of particular features which are available in these platforms for building the apps. So I've already told you in Android, we have a concept of what we are in Android, we have a concept of SDK, right? SDK. And what SDK is? Software development kit. And what this software development kit is providing? A lot of libraries, a lot of libraries. And what developers are doing? Developers are using these libraries and writing their app, writing the code for their app. In the same way, we have heard about Xcode SDK, right? And what Xcode SDK is providing? Again, libraries, right? And what developers are doing? They are developing the code on top of that. They are writing the app on top of that. So as I told you, all these libraries, here the libraries and here the libraries, they are written in completely different way because they are written for different kind of platforms. They are using a different kind of hardware, different kind of everything. So these libraries, one library from here cannot be used in here, and one library from Android cannot be used in iOS. That's not possible. So that's why that is the concept of native app, that they are written independently for each platform. So if I am a company, for example, if I am a company, or we as a group, we are 11 people here, we as a group want to make our startup, and we will say, okay, we will make our own startup, and what we will do, we will purchase some e-commerce stuff there, whatever, like pencils, stationery stuff. We will purchase stationery stuff in our startup, right? So now what I will say, okay, let's create some app, because most of the users are using mobile platform, so let's create an app. So there will be a first question in my mind, that what kind of app I have to create. Shall I create a native app or hybrid app? So if I am creating a native app, it means I have a separate team for Android and separate team for iOS, because these developers are coming from completely different backgrounds. They are doing coding in different languages, and they are writing the apps based on the platforms and the libraries available in Android. People will write for Android SDK, and iOS people will Xcode SDK. So this is the concept of native app. They are written individually for every platform, right? So they are called native because they are native to particular operating system. They are very much associated with particular operating system. For example, Android apps, they are taking advantage of lot of libraries which are written in Android, and that's why they are known as native app. App built for OS cannot be used for another OS. So if I am giving you a APK file, for example, I am giving you a APK file. We have understood what APK file is, right? And I'm saying you, okay, this is the APK file, and install this app in iOS. Would it work? No, because this APK file is very much particular to the Android. Revti is asking a question, so whatever app, let me, this is my cursor, okay. So Revti is asking me a question, whatever apps we see both in iOS and Android are hybrid. No, this is not the case. We will cover it in after learning about the hybrid stuff. So this is not the case, absolutely not. So the thing is that, for native app, they are written for different platforms, and how they are written, that's very important. How they are written with the help of the libraries which are available for Android and which are available for iOS or which are available for Windows. Basically, we are taking the advantage of these libraries. We are building these apps on top of platform. There are some other questions. What about Linux Ubuntu platform? So we cannot install app on Linux or Ubuntu platform. When I will teach you, or when we will discuss the Android architecture and iOS architecture, then you will see that Android and architecture, the base for this architecture is Linux. They all are built on top of Linux, right? So that's the case. Can anyone make native apps? Is it done by manufacturers like Apple or Android? No, no, no. Apple and Android are doing nothing. Uh, Anyone can make native app. You can also make a native app. I can also make a native app, right? What we have to do, once our app is there and we want to put it on a Google Play Store or Apple iOS App Store, so we have to collaborate with Google. We have to pay them a fees so that our app can be on their platform. But usually, mostly the apps are not made by Google or Apple. So they are just providing us the platforms. They are just providing us the tools, techniques, libraries, and other things. But usually, most of the apps they are making by different companies. Like for example, ICICI Bank, if they want to create a Android app, so they have to make a separate team. Like there will be a separate team of ICICI Bank, team of developers which will be creating this Android app, right? So all the apps, it's not like that only Google or Apple can make them, right? I was assuming the native apps are coming by default with mobile device. I think I am wrong. Yes, you are completely wrong, because it's not the case that native apps are coming with default mobile device, because native apps can be made by anyone. I can make it, you can make it, anyone can make it. And it's also not like that I can make a native app in Android and I don't want to publish it in iOS because I don't have iOS expertise. So what I will say, I have a native app and this app is just in Android platform. Why I am calling it native app? Because I have made this app with the help of Android SDK by taking the libraries which are available in Android SDK. That's the concept of the native apps. Now, what are the advantages of native apps? They are very fast in performance. Their user UI is perfectly fine, right? So they are very interactive because in every platform, if I talk about Android, right? So there are a lot of libraries which are used for user interface and user experience. There are a lot of available functionalities and features, right? Have you heard about SQLite? So SQLite is nothing but it is a database which is coming with the Android platform itself for storing something in the DB, right? So most of the apps we are not using this MySQL or something else. We can use it, but we are not using because SQLite is a database which is already provided by the Android to store the data. In the same way, there are a lot of functionalities, lot of features which can improve your UI UX. So in Android, basically, they are giving a lot of things. If you want to build an app, they are giving you a lot of things by which you can improve the UI and the UX. For example, I can show you quickly one thing. So I am opening my Android Studio. I am creating a new project, right? And you see, there are a lot of things which are already available. Basic activity, bottom navigation activity, empty activity, basic activity, whatever you want. Full screen activity, scrolling. So these are the templates which are already provided by this Android platform, right? So if I take this basic activity, right, and if I start doing my code, so what I can show you in our further classes that this basic activity is incorporated and we can see a lot of things here. So we can also see the layout here. So right now it's loading, it will take some time. And when you see here this my activity, it's giving you the option of emulator. And if you choose the option to run this activity, so it's running like it's a very long process. It will take a lot of time to run because it will install everything and launching this. So right now it's launching it. And you can see this basic activity, this next button is there, this icon is there. So how this icon is coming, because I am already using the layouts which are provided by the Android platform, and that's why I can see some features or functionality or something. Like if you click on this three dots, so settings is there. So all these things are inbuilt because this code, because this template which I am using has provided me all this kind of things, right? So what I want to say is, let's close it. Let's close this emulator. So what I want to tell here is, because there are a lot of existing functionalities which are provided by the Android platform, that's why we can create better user UI, we can create fast performance, and we can access the built-in capabilities for camera, GPS, etc. So in my app, at some place, if at some place I want to use uh, I want to use the GPS or I want to use camera or something like that, I don't have to write the code from the scratch. What I have to do, I have to just use the Android library functions which are provided to me. That is the advantage. And what are the limitations? Built for a single platform, we have it's the effort is quite difficult, because if you want to build a native app, you have to build it differently for three. You have to build it separate for iOS, you have to build it separately for Android, and you have to build it separate for Windows. So that is one of the limitation for native apps. Then another thing is, Swift and Kotlin are hard to learn. So Kotlin, I told you, it's a new language, and Swift is also comparatively a new language. So they came into the market around 5 or 6 years before, and they are quite hard to learn. It's an assumption from the developers community. They are not so easy. And if you want to make the native apps, what you have to do, you have to make this on top of Swift and Kotlin, because there is no other way, right? They are expensive to develop and maintain. So I already talked to you with an example. If we are talking about the startup, like we are 10 or 11 people here, and we want to start a startup, and we agreed on this thing that we will having an Android app and we will having an iOS app. So what we have to do, we have to set up the different teams for iOS and also a different team for Android. So for Android, we have different skill sets, right? And those skill sets, we have developers of these skill sets. Then we have testers, basically of this skill set. In the same way, iOS, developers of different skill set, testers of different skill set, right? So in this way, the cost of the whole company is much more if we compare to the hybrid apps. So this is the advantage in the hybrid app that we are covering later, right? So native apps is clear. Just think in the mind that native apps are built specifically for the operating system, first thing, and native apps are using the libraries which are available in Android SDK and iOS SDK. Okay, so that you have to think in keep this thing in your mind whenever you are getting this term native app, right? Now coming to hybrid apps. What are hybrid apps? Hybrid apps are usually built with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and mobile JavaScript framework. So while using the hybrid apps, what we are doing, we are not building them for a specific platform. We are building it with the help of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and mobile JavaScript framework. This is the basic definition. Hybrid apps are not built with the all total functionalities which are available for particularly Android or iOS, because what hybrid apps are, I can install there. like they can be installed like native apps, right? So in case of hybrid apps, if I have a Google Play Store and I have a Apple Play Store, right, I can install these apps as like the native apps. But how I can differentiate it? I can differentiate it with the help of technology on which they are built. They are built on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and mobile JavaScript framework. And most of the times, hybrid apps are one app. They are built in the same way. The coding is mainly done in the similar way for both Android and iOS. We don't have to make a different apps because HTML will work on Android and iOS both, CSS will work on Android iOS both, JavaScript will work on Android iOS both, and there's the mobile JavaScript framework which is almost similar for Android and iOS. So that is the basic difference between the native apps and the hybrid apps. First thing, how they are made and what technology is being used. If you are using very specific some Android function or Android library which is available in Android SDK, then you cannot call it as a hybrid app. That will be a native app because we are using specific functions to the Android functions. But hybrid apps, they are using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and these things are very common for iOS and Android and this mobile JavaScript framework. So hybrid apps, they are common for Android, iOS, and they are built on the common technology, which is being shared by Android and iOS, right? What are the advantages of the native app? So cost is reduced. How cost is reduced? Because there is no double efforts or triple efforts for different platforms. So if I am building app for 3 different platforms, like one for iOS, one for Android, and one for Windows. So native apps, I have to build it separately on a different platforms, but for hybrid apps, I have to just make one app and this app will work on across 3 platforms. I don't have to worry anything else. So there will be a reduction of cost because instead of 3 development teams, I will be having only one development team, right? So that will reduce my cost. And the same way for testers, product owners, product managers, business owners, everything would be one instead of 2. So that is giving me a lot of relief in terms of cost. Maintenance work is less. How I can differentiate the iOS native app with, somebody is asking a question. Let me take it. How can we differentiate of iOS native app and Android native app? You can differentiate it with the help of, their uh, their look and feel, right? So Android will work for just Android, iOS will work for and just for iOS. So iOS IPA will not work on Android, and Android APK will not work on iOS. So that's the basic thing. So whatever the files you are getting from Google Play Store, they are mostly Android native apps or hybrid apps. And whatever the files you are getting from iOS store, they are mostly iOS native apps or maybe hybrid apps. That's a simple way for distinguish them. Okay, so we are talking about the advantages. Portability is very easy for hybrid app, and that's the very important advantages. What do you mean by portability? Portability means if I want to port this app from one platform to another platform, there is very much less efforts which needs to be taken care, because the code is almost the same. So that's why they are very much portable. We can port them, and portability is not a big problem. That's why we are saying portability is quite easy for hybrid apps. Then device utilities can be accessed using APIs. This is also an advantage of the hybrid apps, that device utilities, whatever the device utilities we want to use, there are some APIs, and these APIs are available in mobile JavaScript framework. So we can access some of the device utilities with the help of APIs which are available in JavaScript framework, right? What are the limitations? The performance is very low because the UI UX is not so good, and why performance is very poor? Because we are not able to take there are some libraries for increasing the performance. They are very specific to Android and iOS. And where they are available? They are available in Android SDK and iOS SDK. So as we are not using Android SDK and iOS SDK, so we have to negotiate with the performance. Performance is not so good in that case. These are less secure and less interactive. And why they are less secure and less interactive? Reason is very simple, very simple. Because there in native apps, there are some libraries which are responsible for security. In native app, there are some libraries which are giving very good look and feel. But for hybrid apps, we have to create everything in HTML, CSS from the scratch. So that's why sometimes security and interactivity, these all things are compromised. Okay. And this is not a limitation, rather I have to put it under the advantages, so it's my mistake. They are easy to build. This is an advantage, it's not a limitation. So I think it's something which needs to be in the advantages rather than limitations. Okay, and now lastly we are coming up to the web apps. What are the web apps? Web apps are nothing. They are nothing. Shrisha is asking, yes, there's a question from Shrisha. Shrisha is asking, give some examples of hybrid apps. Hybrid apps, the best one of the example is Khan Academy. You can go to the Khan Academy app, and then you will find this Khan Academy. Try to install it. This is a hybrid app. There are much more hybrid apps. I think in demo session somebody was telling about Ola. Ola is also a bit of hybrid app. It's not a native app. So you can just see how Ola app is behaving, and it's a hybrid app. There's another question. Sahil is asking another question. Do we have libraries in hybrid apps? Uh, do we have libraries in hybrid apps like we have in native apps, or we built from the scratch? There are some libraries which are available in mobile JavaScript mobile framework. So they are using those libraries, but we don't have such exhaustive libraries as we are as in native apps. But so I told you, in native apps, specifically for Android, we have libraries for 3D animations. We have libraries for securities. We have libraries for UI UX, performance, database. So all these kind of things are not available in hybrid apps. They are very limited APIs which are available in this mobile JavaScript mobile framework, but they are not so exhaustive. Most of the times we have to build from scratch whatever we want to implement differently. Okay, perfect. Let's go to the web app. So web app is nothing. You don't have to think about web apps more. Web app is nothing. Web app is something, you are opening your browser. So you have a mobile, you are opening your browser in the mobile, and navigating to the any website, www.google.com. It's a web app if you are looking in mobile. These are web apps. So it's nothing from the browser. you know in mobile also you have browsers, so you have Chrome, you have Safari, and from these browsers whatever you are navigating, you are going to ICICI or IRCTC, whatever the websites you are navigating, these are the web apps. These are the web apps. So web apps are nothing else but just these websites, but on mobile browser. Now, what are the advantages? Reduced cost. So there is no cost. There is no cost. Actually, whenever we discussed about this mobile first approach, right? So whenever we are designing a website, we are creating the layouts of the website, we have to just consider about the mobile considerations. So in the layout, accessibility and all other things, we have to just make the considerations in the CSS and the HTML, and that's it. So there is no extra effort for making any app or something. It's just a web page which you can see from your laptop, and then you have to port it to your mobile, and that's it. And there are some JavaScript consideration, HTML, CSS considerations, Ajax considerations, and that's it. And that's it. So cost is very less. Installation is not needed. So you don't need any installation when you watch something from your mobile. If you want to see something on Chrome or on Safari, you don't need any installation, right? So that's also an added advantage which is associated with these apps, right? They are always up to date. So no, these are the web pages, they are always up to date. So we don't need to, like for apps we have to update it from time to time, but these kind of things are not necessary for the web apps. Services are quite simple, and there is no need for updating the web apps from time to time, and they are accessed from anywhere. So from wherever you are, you don't have any accessibility problems. You just need the internet connection, and that's it. But what are the limitations? Limitations are UI UX issues. So whenever you are looking something on a mobile, you always have some UI UX issues. something is truncated, something is not aligned, you have to scroll it up, scroll it down, all these kind of things. Performance is very bad. So they are not like the native OS. Performance is not so good. Cannot access all the features in the native device. So in the native devices, you have a lot of extra things like the native apps. Native apps can access your camera, native apps can access your Wi-Fi or GPS location, but web pages cannot access your all those things. So this is one of the limitation of web apps. And let's go. Today we will end here because I think we can't take the another topic approaches. This is bigger. So today we will end here after doing the comparison. So this is the last thing which we are covering for today because the time is going to be, this is a 1 hour session. So let's do the comparison. So performance wise, which is the one? Native app is the best. Why native app is the best? The reason is very simple, because in the native apps we are going to use the libraries which are responsible for better performance both in iOS and in Android. There are some specific libraries, but in hybrid app we can't use them. So obviously performance is always better in native app. Budget, cost, native apps are always expensive. The reason, very simple, we have to set up three different teams for native apps. Like we have a different team in Android, we have different team in iOS and different team in Windows. Hybrid apps are less expensive. They are just built on HTML, CSS, JavaScript mobile framework, and there is no need for setting up different teams. So one team can create an app, and in this app we are making some small modifications, and then this is running on all the three platforms. Development language for native apps: Objective-C, Swift, and Java. Objective-C is also for iOS, Swift is also for iOS, Java is for Android, Kotlin is for Android, and for hybrid app, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, these three languages are being used. Development time for native apps, it's quite high because it needs different teams has to work on different things, and for hybrid app it's low. User experience, excellent for native apps. The reason, native apps are using lot of libraries which are already available in Android iOS platform for giving the better UI UX. As I showed you something in the in this Android Studio, I can port any kind of activity, I can port any kind of button, I can port any kind of this setting icons or whatever icon I like, and these all things are making the user experience excellent. And from where these things are coming? They are coming from the Android platforms itself, from the libraries itself. Security, native apps are more secure. Reason, the same thing. There are a lot of libraries which are used for security purpose specific to all these platforms, and we can use them, right? And we can use them and we can make these things more secure. Code portability, hybrid apps are doing perfectly fine here, because whatever the code we are writing in the hybrid apps, we can use the same code in all other platforms with minimal efforts. There will be a small changes, but these changes will be minimal. We don't have to write the code from the scratch. So that's why we are saying code portability is high. Okay, so I think at the end of this session, you are able to get these things. And let me quickly go to the some of the questions, interview questions. Let's brush up. So the first thing here is, sorry, yeah, explain the difference between hybrid and native apps. After doing this session, are you feeling comfortable to explain this difference? I think you will be very comfortable. If you are not comfortable, then please watch this video once again. So after reading this video, you will be able to answer this question very easily. Which kind of app performs faster, native or hybrid? What's the reason for this? I think you all can answer this question as well. The performance is always better than for the native apps. The reason, because native apps are using a lot of inbuilt libraries which are coming with SDK for improving the performance. That's very simple answer. Okay, so that question is also very easy, and that can be answered by, after hearing this session, you are able to answer this. What is APK file? Why it is used? We have discussed it. We have discussed Android SDK platforms. We have discussed this APK file. So what is APK file? Android package kit. That is Android application, Android package file, right? So K stand for kit, A for Android, and P for package, right? And why it is used? Whenever we are writing any program in Android, the code is finally, we have to deliver the code finally in the form of APK file, and then this APK file is going to the Google Play Store. And what we are doing with this APK file, we are installing the app with the help of this APK file. So this question can also be asked. These are some general questions, anyone can ask this. What is IPA file? Why it is used? The same APK file for iOS is IPA file. Exactly, it is used in the same way. So if you want to install some app on iOS platform, you can use the IPA file. And it's what it said. So we are writing the code in iOS in either in Swift or in Objective C, and after this compilation and uh, packaging of this code, we are doing its packaging in form of IPA file. So these are the questions we have covered today. The rest of the questions we will be coming in the next sessions. Another question which we have already covered is, what's the approximate percent of global market share captured by Android and iOS? This can be very frequently asked question, especially when you are going in third or fourth round, which are taken by CEOs, or very high level, which are not the people who are not so much into the technology, but they ask some general questions for awareness. So they usually ask this question: how much is Android and how much is the other? Globally, Android is 75, iOS is 25, but country-wise, these specifications can be different. Like in USA, it can be different. European Union, it's completely different, because there are a lot of people who can purchase the higher versions of iOS, right? But globally, it's 75-25. What is the latest Android version? This is Android 11 API 30. You also have to remember this thing. Sometimes this is also be asked. So just remember it. There is no rocket science, and we will see this thing in coming sessions also. But just remember the latest Android version, in the same way latest iOS version. Just you have to keep these things in mind when you are going for the interview. What are the limitation of web apps? You already know: performance very poor, UI UX very poor, and what else? You can't access the devices, the capabilities of the devices, like Wi-Fi, location, and all these things. There are very, very less probability of using these things in web apps. So in this way, these are some of the basic questions. Some other interview questions are also there, but they are coming from the next slide. So we will discuss it in the next session. So thank you very much for attending this session. And yes, I will now take the questions and stop the recording.